Hello and welcome back to the Puncher's Chance podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking Shakur Stevenson. We're going to be talking Keyshawn Davis, Johnny Fisher, dramatic knockout versus Alen Babic, as well as an interesting fight that is rumoured to be taking place soon in the world of boxing. As you can see, it's just me and Ben again this week. I say again, it's just me and Ben this week. Harry's away on holiday. The only place I think we can start, which is funny seeing as we're saying Harry's away on holiday, is that Johnny Fisher knockout versus Babic. It's the only place to start. I mean, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I bet you Harry's still celebrating out in Turkey after watching that one. But yeah, it was such a good performance. It was like this was meant to be his test for like the next step of his career, but to get him out there in 38 seconds against someone in Alen Babic, who's a very hard hitter, he's no mug in the heavyweight division. It's a really good performance from Johnny Fisher, I think.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, to get him out that quickly, we said here, both me and you predicted a fairly early knockout. Um, but when I said that, I didn't mean within 30 seconds. I meant, within the first few rounds. Yeah, every time Johnny Fisher fights, I think he impresses me that little bit more. And I get slightly close to agreeing with Harry about just how good he actually is. It's just interesting to see where he'll go from here.
Yeah, I think that's similar with me, to be honest. Like, we've watched him in the past, but this was like his step up. And we've kind of been thinking, right, how good is he really? What's his level? But after Saturday night, then he's definitely put himself at least in British title contention. I think he's looking around that area at the moment in terms of where his career is headed.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there's been some bubbling away about a Dave Allen fight, who I think is fighting soon, and he obviously wants a few more fights. But for me, I think it's the winner of Solomon Dacres, David Adelaide, I think, who are fighting for the English, which is the logical next fight for Johnny Fisher. We know how hard it is to build up as a heavyweight. There's such this big gap between the sort of good heavyweights and the great heavyweights, and I think for him that sort of makes sense as a fight. He needs to test himself against a top heavyweight with obviously a title on the line to give him the reason to do it in order to really just see if he is going to be one of those great heavyweights or if he's going to be, staying as a very good heavyweight with a great support and a brilliant ability to get a knockout, which at the end of the day is what people want, is what people pay to see.
Yeah, like the good thing for Matchroom is that you can obviously see he's a really good ticket seller. He's like no matter who he's fighting against is gonna do really well in terms of numbers. But yeah, I think English title will be the logical next step, like you said, and then just build up from there. But I'm sure he'll be keeping an eye on the likes of Fraser Clark as well and Fabio Wardley and really put himself amongst the best in Britain in terms of the heavyweight division, like the next in line coming through in Britain, really.
Without a doubt. I mean, to be honest, every time Harry spoke so highly of Johnny Fisher, I've agreed. I think he's a very good fighter, but I'd always had a sense of doubt that he wasn't quite as good as maybe Harry. But like I said, it's just when you keep doing it every single fight, and every time they go, oh, this is a step up in quality. Can he do it again? And he does deliver. You can only sort of begin to think that the thoughts are true, and obviously Eddie's happy with Johnny because, like you say, he sells the tickets well. He puts on a brilliant show. There's brilliant support inside the arena, and he sells the fights really well. He's obviously got a social media presence outside of boxing. He's just kind of, if nothing else, the perfect fighter to have at that sort of English British level where there isn't so many eyes on it. He can get eyes on it just by being himself and the way that he fights, which I suppose is the big thing.
Yeah, in terms of the night overall, I think it was a really good night for Matchroom. We've seen Lewis Pachetti with a win. Obviously, we've seen him fight against Bucheta. We've seen him previously we've seen him in Cardiff and seen how tough of an opponent he is. He's not easy to stop. He obviously didn't get a stoppage on the night, but he done really well. I thought looked really impressive. Jimmy Sains again, 2 knockouts in 2 weekends. He just looks like he's going to kick on really well. Visioli, another one with another stoppage. Is just they've got a real good amount of talented young fighters coming through a Matchroom at the minute, and in terms of the shows they're putting on within Britain, I think they've been really successful.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a really clever show to put some of those fighters on in the form of Jimmy Sains and Georgie Vizioli and Maisie Rose. I know she didn't win her fight, but these sorts of fighters that, if they're bit on a big card over in Riyadh or over in the States, things like this, that they're going to get lost in the show. They're going to get lost in the size of the main event in the usual sort of situation. But the fact that you can put them on this show, there's going to be eyes on it because the likes of Fisher and Reece Bellotti, good fights, big fights. So there is going to be eyes on this, but there's the kind of eyes that will have the time for the likes of Physioli and Signs, like you said, the two sort of knockout artists. I know Vizioli only got the points decision in this one, but I don't think that's necessarily the worst thing for him. Getting knockouts your whole career is great, but you do need to start to put rounds together and build yourself up. That's what these fights are meant for. So yeah, like you say, I mean, I didn't watch the whole thing. As you know, I was at Disneyland this weekend, but I caught up on the Belotti. I watched the Belotti and the Fisher live, and have caught up on some of the other fights. I was happy that Fisher fight finished as early as it did, but yeah, I just think overall it's another like really successful domestic matchroom show, which is a good thing because we got such quality, huge shows over in Riyadh and obviously in Wembley as well. That it's sometimes these smaller shows that you need to be so enjoyable and be so great. You can't just have the top boxing. It's got to be from the sort of small hall show up. Everything's got to be, and I think everything is in a great place at the moment.
Yeah, boxing at the moment is in the best place it's been in years, really. From, like you said, right from the bottom right to the very top, everyone is doing really well. But yeah, I forgot to mention Reece Bellotti, another British title fight he's been in this year, another really good fight. And like you could just keep giving him British title fights, to be honest, with you, because you just know they're going to be really good. But it'd be interesting to see whether he eventually steps up to European level or whether he's going to defend that belt again. I know Michael Gomez Jr., who's just recently won the English title, will probably be looking at that as his next step. So it's another potential British title classic that you could put on there. But yeah, just moving quickly to the only disappointment of the night that you said was Maisie Rose, who lost I think it was a vacant title against Jasmine Zapata Canosta. I'm interested to see what you thought of her performance because she was really confident in the week going into the fight, but just didn't seem to deliver on the night. There just wasn't enough pressure from what I thought.
It reminded me a little bit, without being a similar sort of performance, because I think it's harsh on Maisie to say that, but of Richard Riakporhe in that Chris Billam Smith fight, where you know they've got the talent and the ability and the work rate and all these sorts of things, but sometimes when people get put on that show, that event with that title, they don't necessarily provide in the same way that they know they should. And I'm sure she'll look back at it and be disappointed in her own performance, without needing to be too critical. This isn't career ending. It's not, this isn't, it's over for her. If anything, she's probably learned more from this now than she will from any other fight that she's won in the past. So it is what it is. It wasn't the best performance, but certainly I think she can still kick on and, like you say, have that confidence and that ability she knows she has, and put it to her future fights and learn from this. You've got to step up to the occasion, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just a rebuild job again now. I think it was just like you can see she's got the talent there, but I think I don't know whether it was slightly nerves or something maybe, but it was just letting them shots off when she needed to, like getting in range, and it was just holding back on the shots a bit too much, and I think that's what cost her the rounds in the end. She was just getting picked off with a couple of counter shots that would just sway in probably the judges' decisions for the rounds, but the main takeaway from the night is obviously Johnny Fisher and just such an impressive performance, a 38-second knockout. Like even we called early knockout, but was definitely not expecting it to be as quick as it was and as decisive as he made it.
Yeah, it's great. It's one of those ones where, how we often say, especially with the American fights, we catch up with them the next day because obviously we're not always staying up until late. This is one of those ones where the highlight that they post on Twitter is the entire fight because there's nothing else to it. The bell rang. There was a little bit of feeling each other out. One 1-2 combo lands, nothing happens. Second 1-2 combo lands, and Babic is flat on the floor, and that's the fight over. Yes, they possibly could have kept the fight going, I think, but it's one of those ones where it's delaying the inevitable if you did. And we all knew that after that shot had landed, heavy shot, he's going to be hurt. So you might as well, let him live to fight another day, or let him, be with his senses to fight another day than keep going. And to be fair, saying that, I don't think Babic has complained about the finish, but any finish that early on in a fight, there's obviously always question marks as to whether or not the fighter still was able to continue even if they didn't.
No, I think it was the right time to stop it. You could see as soon as he stood up from that knockdown, his legs were all over the place. He couldn't keep himself up at all, really. And if the ref allowed it to continue, then Fisher probably would have just walked straight over and finished it anyway after that. But yeah, it was the right decision to make. But I know Babic has only 2 career losses now, but they were 2 quite brutal losses. First round, very quickly knocked out. And I wonder if we'll even see him in a ring again, or where his next step would be now.
Yeah, I don't know. I see what you mean, and I wouldn't question it if he certainly didn't get back in the ring. But I think almost certainly we will see him back in the ring because these guys are prize fighters. They need to make money, and I think there is still money on a Babic fight. Certainly with the right opponent on the other side, I think he still holds that credit where people go, oh, he has done it at a good level, so he's a good sort of tester for upcoming fighters, like we've seen with Johnny Fisher. If another good British heavyweight is coming through the ranks, you put them in with the likes of Alen Babic. That I know we didn't see it tonight, but if Babic had survived, that first round, then we would have seen a fight from Babic, and we would have seen, a good back and forth scrap. But it obviously proved that Johnny Fisher's power was just too much. And yeah, I hope we do see him again. Over the other side of the pond as well, there was a couple fights that couldn't have contrasted that Johnny Fisher performance more if they tried, in the form of Oshaki Foster and Shakur Stevenson. I think Oshaki Foster Conceicao we'll start with. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it back in its entirety, but there's a lot of controversy over the decision with the Conceicao win, and I don't know what your thoughts on that was.
Yeah, I haven't actually managed to watch the full fight, but I watched a lot of the highlights that were on YouTube. And I don't know about your opinion, but from what I seen, it seemed to be Oshaki Foster was throwing a lot of shots, but they were just all hit in the gloves, whereas Coensau was catching him on the way out with the counter shots. I think that's where he was winning the rounds. He wasn't necessarily outworking Foster. It was just he wasn't really getting hit, and he was catching Foster more. So I think that's why the judges have obviously given the rounds to him. But from the reaction afterwards, it seemed like a shock to most people. But I don't know, personally, from what I've seen, I would have agreed with what the judges scored it as, to be honest with you.
Now, I don't know if you've watched a dodgy highlights, but I think you might have got them the other way round, because it was Oshaki Foster that was on the back foot defensive, rolling the shoulder, catching him on the counter, and it was Conceicao that was basically chasing him round the ring. So I don't know if maybe the highlights have made it look different. I don't know. I haven't watched them, but from what I saw of the fight, I think Conceicao finished the fight with less than 10% landing accuracy. Which, having thrown, I think, 400 punches and only landed sort of 30, 40, I personally, from that point of view, I found it hard to score it to Conceicao over the course of the fight. But saying that, I think Oshaki Foster could have let his hands go more, which obviously I think, it's easy to say now when you're not getting hit with anything. You're thinking, I'm winning this fight. He's not touched me with anything. Every time I catch him, that's, 1-0 up to me. But saying that, if he had, through a few extra shots and been a little bit more, rather than just constantly being on the back foot, then possibly he would have won that fight. It's another one of those as well where one of the refs has scored it 116, 112, and another ref scored it 112, 116. You sort of think, how have you guys, scored this fight? What's that sort of? Is it 4 rounds? The other way round? Like that seems,
Mm.
an unrealistic thing to be possible.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to watch the full fight, but if you want to go and watch the top rank highlights afterwards, I think the way they've cut it together makes it look like a lot more of a closer fight than maybe it was. But yeah, well, it's a loss now anyway for Foster. He's obviously lost the world title, and it's going to be a rebuilding job for him now to try and take a belt off someone else. So maybe he'll call for the rematch with the controversy around it, and considering it being a split decision, he might get a chance or a rematch further down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people have been suggesting that Conceicao didn't win a round, which I think is a little bit harsh. I think to say that he didn't win a single round is probably people watching it back um, with a degree of sort of confirmation bias, having seen the reaction on Twitter. I was trying to, as best possible, be as sort of fair as I could be, and from everything that I saw, I thought that Foster certainly had the control of the fight. Never looked like he was done anything from or flustered or hurt from Conceicao. Defensively was superior, but didn't land frequently enough. I think some of the rounds you could certainly have given to Conceicao, but that's boxing, and I think interestingly it probably set up the audience to be quite so harsh on that Shakur Stevenson performance straight afterwards, because once again Shakur Stevenson was completely dominant, completely comfortable, but the audience, there was booing, people left the arena, various things, and yeah, it seems another performance for Shakur Stevenson that's not been taken to too well from the audience.
He just doesn't seem to be getting along with people watching his fights, but he's clearly a very talented fighter. He's dominating these fights, but I thought he was really good on Saturday night. Really good body shots to slow his opponent down. Picked shots very well. You can see just the skill level he's got is probably one of the best in the world, but he's just not entertaining the people that I suppose he might not really care because he's winning the fights. That's what he's focused on, is winning. He probably not as bothered about entertaining people. But I think that's 2 fights in a row now that we've spoken about him, and it's been the same reaction afterwards. I think maybe it'll just needs to be a case of sticking him in there with someone who's probably the same skill level or big name. I know they're looking at Lomachenko as a unification fight next, so something like that might bring the best out of him and really allow him to show his skill level and probably get a bit of a better reaction from the crowd.
Yeah, I think the Lomachenko fight would require a different Shakur Stevenson. I always say I think Lomachenko, and I suppose this is an easy thing to say because he had such an incredible amateur background. I think he had over 300 wins or something, Lomachenko. But he fights like an amateur, even as a pro. He lands a lot of shots. His footwork is incredible. His combinations, all of this is top notch. He doesn't necessarily hurt people all that much, but he's able to land shots. So I think Shakur Stevenson wouldn't be able to fight so much on the back foot against Lomachenko because he's so used to throwing so many punches. Some of those are going to get through, and Shakur Stevenson will have to be more active with his hands in order to beat Lomachenko. But I do think that would be a really great fight. I just think Shakur Stevenson might well be the most hated man in boxing at the moment. People talk about him as if he's, the worst fighter that has ever lived. And this is a sport where we've got Ryan Garcia out, banned for drug abuse, Conor Benn out for having a few too many scrambled eggs. You've got, people who have, beaten their wives, all of this, horrendous stuff. But it seems that if you're too afraid to go for a knockout, that suddenly you're the worst man in the sport, which I think is possibly a slight overreaction from American boxing fans, but they are quite sort of passionate over there. You have to be, Tank Davis or Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson. Like you have to you have to have one camp and one camp only. You can't have any sort of niche opinion on fighters. They can't all be good. One has to be incredible, and one has to be, the worst in the world.
Yeah, it's just a difference of opinion, I think, out there. I think, like you said, with the likes of Tank and then Crawford and things like that, you see them going in, they get in these big stoppage finishes, even like with the likes of Ryan Garcia, with all the news that have been surrounded by him recently, there's still also a lot of sort of fanfare around him. People are still supporting him, even though after all the ridiculous things that have happened over the last few weeks and whatever. But yes, it's a bit harsh on Shakur. I think he's a really good fighter. He's a really top talent, and I think if we see him in there against Lomachenko, it it could go either way. It could be a really good fight and bring the best out of the two of them, or it could be a bit of a chest match, and they're both sort of very cautious against each other, and the fans might not like that then in terms of if it's fought out in America. But I'd be looking forward to it as a fight. I think it'd be a really interesting one to watch.
Yeah, and I think as well, what I don't understand is, when you go and when I see Shakur Stevenson on a bill and I see Shakur Stevenson fighting, I am under no illusion that it's going to be anything other than a Shakur Stevenson performance where he wins by outboxing his opponent. It's not particularly exciting, but against Edwin De Los Santos, there was 27 punches landed from De Los Santos, I think it was. No, sorry, 12 punches landed. It was one every round, and that was it. That's what you expect. You don't go to, I don't know, a Johnny Fisher fight and expect a boxing clinic. You know what you're getting. So I don't know why you would sort of complain when you get something else, or what you expected, or even leave the arena like you expected Shakur Stevenson to get him out of there. A fighter within the same lightweight division that sort of contrasts Shakur Stevenson that also fought was William Zepeda. I don't know if that's a fight you've you've been able to catch up on, but I just think I'm waiting for William Zepeda to get a world title so he can get a world title fight, because no one's going to fight him until he has one, because another third round knockout, that's 31-0 now, lands over 100 punches a round on average, and is just this great pressure fighter that is really exciting to watch. Um, and I just don't think any of the big boys will touch him until he gets his hands on a title to make it worthwhile for them. So maybe one day we'll see a Zepeda Shakur Stevenson fight, but for now, I think everyone's just avoiding him on that.
Yeah, I think I was looking at that fight a few weeks ago. Actually, it'd be really interesting because I know they were talking about the potential Golden Boy and Top Rank sort of 5v5, the similar style they done to Matchroom and Queensbury. So if they could get that, obviously if Zepeda's got a world title and they could do a unification fight between them two on a card like that out in America, I think that'd be really good and draw in a lot of numbers. And like you said, with the style of Zepeda, he's a really on the front foot, come forward sort of fighter, likes to throw a lot of punches against someone like Shakur Stevenson, who's a bit more defensive minded. It could be a really interesting clash between the two of seeing how he deals with someone who's really going to stick it on him. So I think that'd be a good possible future fight for the two of them.
Yeah, I think we spoke a little while back about Jack Cattrall, after he beat Josh Taylor, being the best boxer in the world without a world title currently. And I know he was, a controversial decision away from being undisputed, but I think William Zepeda certainly has also got to be in that conversation for the most talented fighter without a world title currently. You don't get to 31-0 by accident, and he's done so with a really exciting style. A third round knockout. This time, Cabrera brought a good fight in the first round, but by the end of the first round and plenty into the second, the pace was just too much for him. And I forget the name of the British fighter we watched. It was fairly early on in the podcast against
Maxi
Zepeda.
Hughes.
That was it. And we overlooked Zepeda completely. And I think that was some blind optimism in there. But yeah, he's once again done it, and once again, really impressed me. I just want to see a big fight for him, not because I know him or because I just think he deserves it. And it seems only fair that good fighters get world title fights eventually.
Yeah, he's definitely, like you said, he's one of the best in that division. Probably, you could argue one of the best in the world at what he does. Like you said, the Maxi Hughes fight, the fight on the weekend, he's not just a very talented fighter, but also very entertaining to watch. You know, you're gonna have a bit of a tear up when you're watching him, and I think that's the sort of fight that most people want to watch, is someone who knows gonna get in there and really go for it, really stick it on their opponent and go for that finish, not just try and work their way to the final bell and win the rounds. And that's sometimes where people can get a bit frustrated, maybe watching these fighters. But in terms of Zepeda, you know, every time he steps in that ring, he's gonna go for the knockout.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then I mentioned it in the intro. Obviously, there's a fight that's being rumored at the moment: Canelo Alvarez versus Chris Eubank Jr. A lot of people will be saying, Canelo Alvarez, why not David Benavidez still? But this is a fight I didn't see coming. I'm going to be honest, until it was rumored. But if it's a fight that can be made from Chris Eubank's point of view, do you think that's a good fight to be made? Do you think it'd be a close fight, or are we still yet to see Canelo get in with somebody since probably Floyd Mayweather that's really going to test him, other than obviously Bivol as well?
To be honest with you, when I seen it, I was quite shocked that Eubanks managed to put himself in that position, because it's got to be, was it 18 months maybe since we last seen him in a ring, and it's not as if he's really fought anyone of Canelo's level in the last few years. It was looking more likely that he was facing Hamza Shiraz in September, but that's obviously gone to Tyler Denny. So I don't know whether the Canelo fight has popped up in the meantime and he's thought, I'll make more money there than a fight at Wembley against Hamza Shiraz. But yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. I thought, like, Canelo Benavidez is the fight everyone wants to see, I think, and I think that's the fight that should be made. But whether we're gonna get it or not, because I don't think Canelo's got many fights left. But yeah, I think it'd be a comfortable night for Canelo against Eubank. I just don't think he's at the latter stage of his career now, and I just don't think he'd have enough to put a dent in Canelo, really.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Eubank obviously carries a huge amount of clout, a huge amount of, he's a big name, obviously, with his father and his own career as well. And from a commercial point of view, this makes a lot of sense. There's been a lot of conversations as to whether Canelo struggles to make fights because his fight purse is so big, and certain fighters you can't fight because it's just not going to bring in enough money, and the PBC and all of these sorts of issues there has been. And yeah, commercially it makes sense, but from a ring sense and a boxing point of view, I like you say, I think Eddie Hearn said it. I don't know how Chris Eubanks managed to wangle himself this fight, if he has. And yeah, I think Canelo seems to. Yes, he's not got that same knockout impetus that he maybe once had, but he seems to almost be getting better with age and more comfortable and more technical and just defensively brilliant with age. And I just, like you say, I don't think Chris Eubank's going to have the minerals to break him down, or the power to make him hurt, and therefore, I only predict it being a Canelo Alvarez comfortable victory. Um, I think I saw someone saying the only reason this fight would make sense would be if Canelo fought in the UK against Chris Eubank, and I don't think that would be the case, but I certainly wouldn't argue against it just because I'd love to see Canelo fight live in the flesh. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it'll be a T-Mobile Arena or Mexico City or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's more than likely to be out in America or possibly Saudi if they can get the money involved there, because it's obviously going to be two fighters that are going to be demanding a lot of money. But yeah, I think the names involved, like you said, with Eubank, the name carries him a lot, I think, and he's obviously a very skilled fighter, but I don't think he wouldn't be in that position without the name, I don't think. But yeah, it's definitely a fight that will draw a big crowd because there's two massive names within boxing, but it's only one way I could see it, and it's a Canelo victory. But then hopefully, if that fight does play out, we do get the Benavidez fight afterwards, because I think that's the one everyone really wants to watch.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then this coming weekend, two of the best fighters in the world within their weight divisions. Jared Ennis, one of the best, or certainly possibly even the best welterweight in the world at the moment, and then obviously Sky Nicholson as well, WBC world featherweight champion, arguably the best featherweight boxer in the world, both fighting on the same card. Not necessarily against the biggest opponents. I think there's bigger fights out there for both of them, but those will come in time. For the time being, I think those are two brilliant fighters that, when you see their name, you pay attention, really, whoever they're fighting.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching Boots fight. Obviously, I think it's a build-up, obviously, because it's his first matchroom fight since signing with Eddie Hearn. So they're obviously they're getting behind him. Eddie Hearn, in a lot of interviews since they signed him, has spoken, like I said, how highly he rates Jared Ennis, and obviously you can see how much of a talented fighter he is. He is one of the best in the world, and currently at 31-0, I expect him to make it 32-0 on Saturday. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes with Matchroom. Like, they've obviously got high hopes for him. They are going to want to build him up into probably the biggest star that they've got, and it'd be interesting to see if they can get a mega fight out in America with the likes of maybe Crawford. But it'd be interesting. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they build him up from here. But in terms of his opponent on the weekend, Avanesian, he is a dangerous fighter. He can cause an upset. We've seen him with the likes of Josh Kelly before. He managed to stop Josh Kelly when he was probably not the favourite going into that fight. So it's definitely a bit of danger there on the weekend for Boots, but I can see him getting through it and showing his level on Saturday night.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think this is both. They're at the point in their careers where they're ready for big fights, and obviously, Boots is going to be, like you say, built up by Matchroom, and I think Sky is mostly waiting for those big fights to happen. Obviously, we've spoken quite a lot about Elizabeth Ashoba, the WBC silver. Maybe that fight will happen in time, but possibly similar to Zepeda, until she gets a world title around her waist. I think she's a difficult idea, difficult prospect for anyone to fight against. And if there's fights out there that the WBC will sanction for you to defend against, then you'd be silly not to. I think she's obviously spoke about Serrano. That's the fight she wants, and that would be a massive, massive fight in women's boxing. Maybe not quite so big as Serrano Taylor, which we should be seeing, but obviously that's big sort of historically and what they've both done for women's boxing. But Sky Nicholson at the moment, I think for me, without a doubt, is the face, the poster girl of female boxing, and the poster girl of Matchroom as a whole, really at the moment. So yeah, really exciting to see those both fight. Now they are both also, this fight is on the Boxing News app for our predictions. So we'll have to do our predictions now for that one. The other thing is, I've been in France all week. Like I said, I haven't been able to see what my score was on Boxing News for some reason. It wasn't letting me check. How many points did you get last weekend for the Fisher Babic?
um, I think I finished on 10. I know I finished behind you two because I went for a stoppage with uh, Reece Bellotti, and obviously it was a points decision win for him. So I know I haven't won this weekend. I think it'll be between you two. It might be a split of the rounds, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I wasn't able to check, but I think it's only fair that if Harry's not here to claim it, then I win by
Yeah, you can
automatic.
claim it.
But we'll check with him just in case, because if I win outright, then we'll say that wasn't a rule, in case it comes back to bite me later. But yeah, Ennis versus Avanesian is obviously the main event. But the first fight on the Boxing News app is Christopher Diaz versus Derlin Hernandez, super featherweight 8 rounder. Now I planned to get ahead of the schedule and do some research while I was waiting for my flight. But then there was PlayStations at Paris airport, and I ended up playing FIFA instead. So I haven't done this. So we're going to have to just freestyle it. I won't take quite as long as Harry did or does. And I'm going to go for a Diaz decision.
Yeah, me and you were both going with the same. I've gone Diaz decision as well.
Yeah, I find when me and Harry have done this as the two of us, we found it gets a little bit kind of like, because there's just two of us, it just seems like we're agreeing all the time, but I'm sure there'll be differences.
Yeah.
Jalil Hackett, Peter Dobson, 10 rounder welterweight. I'll let you go first on this one, so I can't accuse you of copying me. What's your prediction for that one?
I'm having a quick look at it. I think it'd be a close fight, but it's sort of someone maybe at the end of their career or later stages of their career against someone a bit earlier on, and I've gone with Hackett by stoppage.
Yep, same for me. So we're both agreeing on it. All so far. The next one, Khalil Ko versus Manuel Gallegos, light heavyweight 10 rounder. Now this one's a tougher one to call. It's similar sort of idea, sort of an earlier fighter against a bit more of an experienced fighter. I'm going to go for a co-decision. I don't think he's going to get the finish. I think Gallegos will be hold on, but I think he will get a comfortable win.
Yeah, we've gone with the same again. My thought process is you hardly ever see a Mexican fighter get stopped, really, do you? So I've gone for the decision for Cole as well.
Fair enough. And this next one, I was going to say I'll let you go first, but I think it's fairly pointless because I'm gone for a Nicholson points decision, and I personally think any other thing is a bizarre choice.
Yeah, Nicholas Point's decision, I think, is pretty much guaranteed. And when you watch Sky Nicholson fight, you know she's more than likely just going to pick the rounds up and win on the scorecards.
Yeah, fair enough. And then for the main event, what are you going for? Jaron Ennis, David Avanesan, welterweight, 12 rounder.
I'm going for Jaron Ennis. I'm gonna go for a decision for Ennis because I quite like Gavanessi and I think he's a very tough fighter. And we've gone the same, have we?
We have, yes. Which means the only difference maker is going to be the rounds, obviously, which is always a really tough one to call. Um,
I tell you what, actually, I'll go with a stoppage for Ennis, not just to make it
ooh,
different, but I was thinking
okay.
about it anyway. I think he'll make a bit of a statement this weekend, his first show with Matchroom, so I'll go with a stoppage for Ennis. That'll be our split for Saturday night.
Okay, fair enough. And then I've gone for 48 rounds. Let me show it to the camera. 48 rounds. Oh, it's going to be backwards, isn't it? Never mind. 48 rounds I've gone for. Um, what are the odds on that one saying? 43-8. I mean, that's just a bit niche, isn't it? What even is that? Sort of 5-1.
I've gone 45 rounds, but mine's just come up as I've only got the Ennis and Cole to win the fight at
Yeah, same.
0.25 to 1. So,
Okay, so yours is
yeah,
yeah, more
hopefully Ennis can get the stoppage.
yeah. But I mean, it's highly possible. It's not impossible. He reminds me a little bit of Whitaker in the sense of not only because obviously there is a bit of the sort of showboating and things like this, but you watch him and you think, oh, just finish him. Like you've got it in you. I know you're good enough, but they just don't tend to go for it. And fair enough if that's what you want to do. I'm not the one in the ring, so I'm not one to question that. Um, yeah, I think this is weird. This is one of the quietest weeks in boxing we've had for a long while. We normally struggle to
Yeah.
fit everything in to one episode, and this week, I'm not saying that we're cramming or we're struggling for an episode, but we're certainly filling it out a little bit more than we normally have to, which is a good thing. It's nice to be able to take a bit more time to sort of stop and think and talk about boxing. I don't know if you've got anything else that that's happened, if you've seen, or possibly you're thinking about coming up soon.
No, like you said, I think it's a bit of a quieter weekend this weekend, but yeah, I'm sure it'll ramp up again soon. Obviously, we've got, especially in terms of UK cards, you'll have the Magnificent Seven card, I think, is coming up at the end of this month, which is always amazing to watch. And then obviously it'll be the build up, and I suppose the next mega one will be the Wembley show in September. But yeah, it's a bit of a quiet week, but with all that we've been blessed with in boxing over the last probably 12 months or a bit longer now, we can't really complain, really.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I mean, yeah, like you said, sort of domestically, I can think Chisora Joyce is coming up. Like you said, the Magnificent Seven, and then like you said, the Wembley card. The other thing is as well. we've mentioned this many a time on the podcast. We are currently sponsoring a show down in Llanelli in South Wales. Dan Francis and Richie Garner, Shadow Boxing. We're going to be putting a plan together for some really great content to do with that show coming up soon. So if you're not subscribed already, that sounds interesting to you. Obviously, hit the subscribe button. Stay, around to see some of that interesting content that we're going to be building around that show. Other than that, we've got some interesting ideas. I think that we're playing around with at the moment. Obviously, beyond the podcast. So I think basically what I'm saying is hit subscribe, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff, so you can see when the exciting things that I'm not going to say what they are, but just trust me when I say that they're going to be coming soon, and they're going to be worth watching or listening to, or various other platforms available, Spotify, etc. But other than that, it wraps it up for once again another brilliant Puncher's Chance episode, another remote one. It will be a little while, I think, before we're back in person. But these work. I can have a cup of tea, all that jazz. And thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you all next week.
Puncher's Chance. Puncher's Chance podcast.